Nathan Cross never thought he would leave Earth. He spent his days working in the busy emergency room of Chicago General Hospital. The job was hard and the hours were long, but Nathan loved helping people when they needed it most. His hands never shook when he worked on patients who were hurt badly. Other doctors always said Nathan stayed calm when everyone else was scared. The hospital saw terrible things every day. Car crashes brought in people with broken bones and bleeding wounds. Gang fights left young men with knife cuts and gunshot holes. Sometimes whole families came in after house fires or building collapses. Nathan had seen it all in his 10 years as a trauma surgeon. He could fix almost anything that came through the doors. Chicago was a dangerous city, and the people who lived there got hurt in ways that doctors on other worlds never saw. Nathan learned to work fast with basic tools. Sometimes the fancy machines broke down and he had to use his hands and simple instruments to save lives. The other doctors thought he was crazy for not trusting the computers, but Nathan knew that machines could fail when people needed help the most. One morning, Nathan found a strange letter on his desk. It came from something called the Galactic Medical Exchange Program. Nathan had heard about aliens on the news, but he never thought they were real. The letter said they wanted him to work on a space station called Harmony 7. They needed doctors who could handle difficult cases. Nathan laughed and threw the letter in the trash. Space medicine sounded like science fiction to him, but his friend Dr. Paul Martinez pulled it out and read it again. Paul said the aliens were real, and this was a chance to see the galaxy. Nathan told Paul he was crazy, but Paul kept talking about it for weeks. The pay was very good, and Nathan needed money for his sister's medical school. His parents had died in a car crash 2 years ago, and Nathan was taking care of his younger sister Amy. She was smart and wanted to be a doctor like Nathan, but medical school cost a lot of money. The alien job paid 10 times what Nathan made at the hospital. Nathan finally called the number on the letter. A strange voice answered and asked him questions about his medical training. The voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Nathan told them about his work in trauma surgery and all the difficult cases he had handled. The voice seemed interested when Nathan talked about working without machines. 3 weeks later, Nathan found himself on a shuttle leaving Earth. He had never been in space before and felt sick during the trip. The other passengers were humans who worked for different alien companies. They told Nathan that most aliens thought humans were primitive and dangerous. They called Earth a death world because so many things there could kill people. Harmony 7 was bigger than Nathan expected. The space station looked like a giant wheel spinning in space. Inside it felt like a small city with thousands of aliens walking around. Nathan saw creatures that looked like giant bugs and others that looked like walking crystals. Some floated in the air and others had too many arms and legs to count. Dr. Zelith was waiting for Nathan at the medical bay. She looked like a tall blue woman with silver eyes that never blinked. She spoke perfect English, but her voice was cold and flat. Dr. Zelith told Nathan that humans had a reputation for being violent and crude. She said alien medicine was much more advanced than anything humans had developed. The medical bay was full of machines Nathan had never seen before. Robots moved around taking care of patients who lay on floating beds. Screens showed information about each patient's body in languages Nathan could not read. Everything was clean and quiet and very different from the noisy emergency room back home. Dr. Zelith showed Nathan to a small room in the minor injuries section. She said this was where he would work since human medicine was too primitive for serious cases. The other doctors Nathan met were polite but clearly thought he was not very smart. Dr. Kess was a thin alien with 4 arms who specialized in surgery. Dr. Thane looked like a walking rock and knew everything about alien diseases. Nathan's first patients were aliens with small cuts and bruises. The medical computers could diagnose these problems instantly and suggest treatments. Nathan watched the other doctors rely completely on their machines. They never touched the patients or looked closely at their injuries. Everything was done by robots following computer programs. On his 3rd day, Nathan saw something that worried him. A young alien had fallen and hurt his leg. The computer said the leg was fine, but Nathan could see the alien was in real pain. Nathan asked to examine the patient, but Dr. Zelith said the computer was never wrong. She gave the alien some medicine and sent him away. Nathan followed the patient and saw him collapse in the hallway. Nathan ran over and felt the alien's leg with his hands. There was a small fracture that the computer had missed. Nathan splinted the leg with some metal strips and called for help. Dr. Kess arrived and was angry that Nathan had touched the patient without permission. But when Dr. Kess scanned the leg again, she found the fracture Nathan had discovered. She looked confused and asked Nathan how he knew the leg was broken. Nathan explained that on Earth doctors learned to use their hands and eyes to find problems that machines might miss. Dr. Kess seemed interested, but also skeptical about human methods. Word spread quickly that the human doctor had found a problem the computers missed. Some aliens thought this was impossible, while others wondered if humans had special abilities. Nathan tried to explain that he just used basic medical skills that all Earth doctors learned, but the aliens found this hard to believe. Dr. Zelith was not happy about the incident. She warned Nathan to follow station procedures and not interfere with computer diagnoses. Nathan agreed, but privately wondered what would happen when a real emergency came to the station. He had seen how the alien doctors panicked when their machines did not give them clear answers. Nathan spent the next few weeks treating minor problems and watching how alien medicine worked. The technology was amazing, but the doctors seemed helpless without it. They had forgotten how to think for themselves and solve problems when the computers failed. Nathan began to understand that his Earth training might be more valuable than anyone realized. Nathan had been working on Harmony 7 for 3 weeks when everything changed. He was finishing his shift in the minor injuries ward when alarms started blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the hallways and automated voices announced a medical emergency in multiple alien languages. Nathan had never heard the station's emergency system before, and the sound made his heart race. Dr. Zelith's voice came over the communication system, telling all medical staff to report to the main emergency bay immediately. Nathan ran through the corridors following other doctors and nurses. He could see panic in their movements even though he did not understand their alien expressions. Something very bad was happening and everyone knew it. The emergency bay was chaos when Nathan arrived. A massive cargo ship had crashed into the station's docking bay during what should have been a routine landing. The ship was carrying Nixari refugees fleeing from a war on their home planet. These aliens were small and fragile with thin bones and pale skin. They came from a world with very low gravity, and their bodies were not built for trauma. Nathan counted at least 40 injured Nixari scattered across the emergency bay floor. Some were bleeding from deep cuts while others had broken bones sticking through their skin. Many were unconscious and their breathing was shallow and fast. Nathan had seen injuries like these many times in Chicago, but the alien medical staff looked completely lost. Dr. Zelith stood in the center of the bay staring at a large computer screen that was flashing red error messages. The medical scanners could not identify most of the injuries because they had never seen trauma like this before. The Nixari physiology was different from other species and the computers did not know how to treat them. Dr. Kess was pushing buttons frantically, but the machines kept giving impossible treatment. Suggestions. Nathan watched Dr. Thane try to help a Nixari who was bleeding badly from a cut on his arm. The rock-like doctor kept scanning the wound with different devices, but none of them could figure out how to stop the bleeding. The Nixari was getting weaker as more blood flowed onto the floor. Nathan knew the alien would die in minutes if someone did not act fast. Without asking permission, Nathan grabbed some clean cloths and ran to the bleeding Nixari. He pressed the cloths directly against the wound and applied firm pressure with his hands. Dr. Thane stepped back in shock as Nathan's hands became covered with alien blood. The bleeding slowed down almost immediately, and the Nixari's color began to improve. Dr. Kess saw what Nathan was doing and shouted that touching patients directly was dangerous and against station rules. But Nathan ignored her and moved to the next injured Nixari. This one had a broken leg that was bent at a terrible angle. Nathan could see that the bone needed to be set quickly before permanent damage occurred. Nathan found some metal strips from a supply cabinet and carefully straightened the Nixari's leg. The alien screamed in pain, but Nathan held the leg steady while he wrapped the metal strips around it to make a splint. He had done this procedure hundreds of times on Earth, and his hands moved with practiced confidence. The other doctors watched in amazement as Nathan's simple splint held the broken bone in place. More injured Nixari kept arriving as rescue teams pulled them from the crashed ship. Nathan realized he needed to organize the chaos if they were going to save lives. He started sorting the patients into groups based on how badly they were hurt. The ones who were bleeding heavily or had trouble breathing went into one area. Those with broken bones but stable vital signs went into another area. The patients with minor injuries were moved to a third area. Dr. Zelith demanded to know what Nathan was doing, but he was too busy to explain. He had learned triage procedures during his residency training, and knew that saving the most people meant making hard choices about who to treat first. The alien doctors had never heard of triage and thought Nathan was abandoning patients who needed help. Nathan found a Nexari woman who had stopped breathing. Her chest was not moving and her skin was turning blue. The medical scanners were still trying to analyze her condition, but Nathan could see she needed immediate help. He tilted her head back and began mouth-to-mouth resuscitation while pushing on her chest to restart her heart. The sight of Nathan putting his mouth on the alien patient horrified Dr. Kess and Dr. Thane. They thought he was contaminating the patient and himself with dangerous germs, but after 2 minutes of CPR, the Nexari woman gasped and started breathing again. Her eyes opened and she looked around in confusion, but she was alive. Nathan worked for 6 straight hours, moving from patient to patient. He used basic human medical techniques that he had learned during his first year of medical school. Direct pressure stopped bleeding. Simple splints stabilized broken bones. Manual airway clearing helped patients breathe. Elevation of injured limbs reduced swelling. These were not advanced procedures, but they worked when the fancy alien machines failed. By the end of the crisis, Nathan had personally treated 23 injured Nexari. 17 of them survived their injuries and were expected to recover completely. The alien doctors working with their computers had managed to save only 3 patients during the same time period. The difference was clear to everyone in the emergency bay. Dr. Zelith stood looking at the statistics on her computer screen. She could not understand how the primitive human had achieved better results than their advanced medical technology. Dr. Kess kept asking Nathan to explain his techniques, while Dr. Thane wanted to know how humans learned to work without machines. The surviving Nexari refugees gathered around Nathan as he cleaned up after the emergency. They touched his hands gently and spoke words he could not understand, but their meaning was clear. They were thanking him for saving their lives when no one else could help them. Nathan felt embarrassed by their gratitude, but also proud that his Earth training had made a difference. News of what happened spread quickly through Harmony 7. Other medical stations in the sector heard about the human doctor, who had achieved impossible results during the refugee crisis. Nathan did not know it yet, but his reputation was beginning to grow beyond the walls of the medical bay where he worked. Dr. Zelith called Nathan to her office the next morning. She admitted that human medical techniques might have value that alien medicine had overlooked. She said she wanted to learn more about how Earth doctors were trained to work without relying on computers. Nathan agreed to teach her, but warned that human medicine was often messy and required getting blood on your hands. Word about Nathan's work during the refugee crisis spread faster than he expected. Within 2 weeks, medical facilities across 3-star systems had heard about the human doctor, who saved lives using primitive techniques. Nathan received messages from alien doctors asking about his methods and requesting copies of human medical procedures. Some were curious, while others were skeptical that such basic techniques could work better than advanced technology. The first major request for Nathan's help came from Arcturus Beta mining colony. Dr. Voss was the chief medical officer there, and he sent an urgent message to Harmony 7. A massive earthquake had trapped dozens of miners deep underground, and the rescue operation was creating injuries that the colony's medical team could not handle. Their computer systems were suggesting treatments that made no sense for the types of wounds the miners had suffered. Dr. Zelith was reluctant to send Nathan away from the station, but the situation on Arcturus Beta was desperate. The colony was offering a large payment for expert consultation, and Harmony 7 needed the money. Nathan packed a small bag with basic medical supplies and took a fast transport ship to the mining world. Arcturus Beta was nothing like the clean medical station Nathan had gotten used to. The planet was covered in red dust, and the mining colony looked like it had been built from scrap metal. The buildings were connected by tubes to protect people from the toxic atmosphere outside. Nathan could feel the heavy gravity pulling at his body as soon as he stepped off the transport. Dr. Voss met Nathan at the landing pad and immediately began explaining the crisis. The earthquake had caused cave-ins throughout the main mining tunnels. Rescue teams had pulled out 37 miners, but most of them had crushing injuries and broken bones. The colony's medical computers could not figure out how to treat trauma from being buried under tons of rock and metal. The medical facility was smaller than Nathan's emergency room back in Chicago. Injured miners lay on simple beds while alien doctors stood around looking confused at their computer screens. Nathan could smell blood and hear the groans of people in pain. It reminded him of the worst nights at Chicago General Hospital. Nathan walked through the facility and quickly assessed each patient. He saw the same patterns he had learned to recognize during his training on Earth. Crush injuries caused internal bleeding that was hard to detect. Broken ribs could puncture lungs if they were not treated carefully. Head injuries required constant monitoring because symptoms could change quickly. The first patient Nathan examined was a human miner named Jake, who had been trapped for 6 hours. His left leg was badly crushed and the alien doctors wanted to cut it off because their scanners showed severe damage. But Nathan could feel a pulse in Jake's foot, which meant blood was still flowing through the injured leg. He told Dr. Voss that the leg could be saved if they acted quickly. Nathan used metal rods from the mining equipment to build a frame around Jake's leg. This would hold the broken bones in place while the swelling went down. The technique was called external fixation, and Nathan had learned it during his orthopedic surgery. Rotation. Dr. Voss had never seen anything like it, but he helped Nathan attach the rods to Jake's leg bones with special pins. The next patient was an alien miner whose chest had been crushed by falling rocks. She was having trouble breathing, and the medical scanners could not figure out why. Nathan listened to her chest with a simple stethoscope and heard that one lung was not working properly. Air was trapped in her chest cavity and pressing against her heart. Nathan needed to release the trapped air immediately or the miner would die. He found a large needle in the medical supplies and carefully inserted it between her ribs. Air hissed out through the needle and the miner's breathing improved right away. Dr. Voss watched in amazement as Nathan's simple procedure saved the patient's life in less than 2 minutes. Nathan worked through the night treating one patient after another. He taught the colony's medical staff how to recognize the signs of internal bleeding and shock. He showed them how to stabilize broken bones with simple splints made from mining equipment. Most importantly, he taught them how to prioritize patients based on who needed help most urgently. Dr. Voss was fascinated by Nathan's approach to medicine. The human doctors seemed to know what was wrong with patients before the computers finished their scans. Nathan explained that Earth doctors learned to use all their senses when examining patients. They looked at skin color and listened to breathing patterns. They felt for pulses and checked how patients responded to touch and movement. The alien medical staff were amazed when Nathan diagnosed a serious head injury just by watching how a patient's eyes moved. The computers had missed this problem because they were looking for obvious brain damage on their scans. Nathan's simple neurological tests revealed that the patient had bleeding inside his skull that needed immediate surgery. By morning, Nathan had treated all 37 injured miners. 34 of them were expected to make full recoveries and return to work. Only 3 had injuries too severe for the colony's limited medical facilities, and they were transported to advanced hospitals on other worlds. Dr. Voss calculated that without Nathan's intervention, at least 15 miners would have died from their injuries. The story of Nathan's success on Arcturus Beta reached the Galactic Medical News Network. For the first time, a human doctor was featured in their reports about advanced medical techniques. The news story called Nathan's methods revolutionary and suggested that other medical facilities should study human trauma procedures. Nathan returned to Harmony 7 to find dozens of messages waiting for him. Medical schools wanted him to give lectures about human medicine. Research hospitals offered him positions studying trauma treatment. Even the Galactic Medical Association requested copies of Earth's medical training materials. Dr. Zelith promoted Nathan to senior medical officer and gave him authority to teach other doctors about human techniques. She said the station needed to prepare for more emergencies where advanced technology might fail. Nathan began holding weekly training sessions where he demonstrated basic human medical procedures to curious alien doctors. The training sessions were popular, and doctors came from other stations to attend. Nathan taught them how to take vital signs without machines and how to examine patients using only their hands and simple tools. He showed them triage procedures for handling multiple casualties and basic surgery, techniques that worked when computers failed. Nathan's reputation continued to grow as more aliens learned about Deathworlder medicine. He did not know it yet, but his name was being mentioned in medical journals across the galaxy. Some doctors called his techniques primitive, while others recognized their practical value. Either way, Nathan Cross was becoming famous as the human who was changing how aliens thought about medicine. Nathan's success at the mining colony caught the attention of people beyond the medical community. Commander Helen Torres was a human liaison officer, working with the Galactic Federation's Disaster Response Division. She had read the reports about Nathan's work and thought his skills could be valuable for the Federation's emergency teams. Helen contacted Nathan through secure channels and asked him to consider joining special response missions across the galaxy. The offer was tempting, but Nathan was comfortable at Harmony 7. He had started teaching regular classes about human medicine and enjoyed watching alien doctors learn new techniques. Dr. Zeleth supported his work and gave him freedom to develop training programs. But Helen explained that there were crises happening throughout the galaxy where Nathan's unique skills could save thousands of lives instead of dozens. The decision was made for Nathan when an emergency call came from Kepler Station. This was a major research facility studying ancient microorganisms found on dead planets. Something had gone terribly wrong in their laboratories and people were dying from an unknown disease. The station's advanced medical systems could not identify the pathogen and had no idea how to treat the infected researchers. Nathan packed his medical supplies and joined Helen on a fast military transport to Kepler Station. During the trip, Helen explained that the research facility had been studying samples from a planet that had been dead for millions of years. The scientists thought the old microorganisms were harmless, but something had activated them, and they had escaped from containment. Kepler Station was in complete panic when Nathan and Helen arrived. The research facility was under quarantine, and nobody was allowed to leave or enter without special permission. Nathan could see through the windows that people inside were wearing protective suits and moving very carefully. The station's medical bay was full of sick researchers and more were getting infected every day. Dr. Maya Patel was the station's chief medical officer, and she met Nathan at the airlock. She looked exhausted and frightened as she explained the situation. 17 researchers had been infected with the unknown pathogen over the past 4 days. Their symptoms started with fever and weakness but quickly got worse. 3 researchers had already died, and the others were failing fast. The station's medical computers had analyzed the pathogen for 72 hours, but could not identify it. The disease did not match anything in their vast databases of known illnesses. The automated treatment systems kept suggesting different medicines, but nothing worked. Dr. Patel said it was like fighting an enemy they could not see or understand. Nathan put on a protective suit and entered the medical bay to examine the infected researchers. What he saw reminded him of the worst disease outbreaks he had studied during medical school. The patients had high fevers and were losing fluids through sweating and vomiting. Their immune systems were attacking their own bodies as much as they were fighting the infection. Nathan recognized the pattern, even though he had never seen this specific disease before. Earth had taught him about many different types of infections because humans had evolved alongside thousands of dangerous microorganisms. His medical training included studying diseases that computers might not be able to identify or categorize. Instead of trying to identify the exact pathogen, Nathan focused on supporting the patient's natural defenses. He started giving them fluids to replace what they were losing through fever and vomiting. He used simple medicines to reduce their temperatures and help their bodies fight the infection. Most importantly, he isolated the sickest patients to prevent the disease from spreading further. Dr. Patel was skeptical about Nathan's approach because he was not trying to kill the pathogen directly. All of galactic medicine was based on identifying diseases precisely and then using specific treatments to eliminate them. Nathan's method of supporting the body's natural healing seemed primitive and unscientific to her, but Nathan explained that Earth medicine had learned to work with the human immune system rather than just relying on artificial treatments. Sometimes the best approach was to help the body heal itself, instead of trying to control every aspect of the disease process. This was especially important when dealing with unknown pathogens that might not respond to standard medicines. Nathan worked with Dr. Karen Lee, who was a human xenobiologist, studying the escaped microorganisms. Karen had found that the ancient pathogens were actually very fragile and could not survive long outside of living hosts. The problem was that they reproduced very quickly inside infected people and overwhelmed their immune systems before natural defenses could respond. Together, Nathan and Karen developed a treatment plan that focused on slowing down the infection while strengthening the patient's immune responses. They used basic earth medicines that boosted white blood cell production and helped the body recognize foreign invaders. They also used cooling techniques to reduce fevers and prevent brain damage from high temperatures. The first patient to respond to Nathan's treatment was a young researcher named Dr. Tim Bradley, who had been infected 3 days earlier. His fever dropped and he started keeping food down for the first time since getting sick. Within 24 hours, Tim was sitting up in bed and asking for water. Dr. Patel could not believe that such simple treatments were working when their advanced medicines had failed. One by one, the infected researchers began to recover under Nathan's care. Their fevers broke and their strength returned as their immune systems finally gained control over the ancient pathogens. The alien doctors at Kepler Station watched in amazement as human medical techniques succeeded where their computers had given up. The crisis at Kepler Station made Nathan famous throughout the scientific community. Research facilities across the galaxy heard about the human doctor who had defeated an unknown pathogen using primitive earth medicine. Medical journals published articles about Nathan's treatment methods and universities requested guest lectures from him. Dr. Patel became one of Nathan's strongest supporters and advocates. She wrote detailed reports about how human medical philosophy had saved her research station when advanced technology failed. She recommended that all major medical facilities should have at least one doctor trained in Deathworlder techniques for handling unknown emergencies. Nathan returned to Harmony 7 to find that his reputation had grown far beyond the medical community. The Galactic Federation offered him a permanent position as head of emergency medical response for dangerous situations. Medical schools competed to hire him as a professor and researcher. But what pleased Nathan most was a message from his sister Amy back on Earth. She had graduated from medical school and was starting her residency in emergency medicine. Amy said she was proud that her brother was showing the galaxy what human doctors could accomplish. Nathan realized that his work was not just helping alien patients, but also proving that Earth medicine had value, that the galaxy was finally beginning to recognize. 5 years had passed since Nathan first arrived at Harmony 7, and his life had changed in ways he never imagined. The quiet trauma surgeon from Chicago had become the most famous human doctor in the galaxy. Medical facilities across hundreds of star systems knew his name and wanted to learn his techniques. The Galactic Medical University had created the Cross Institute for Emergency Medicine to teach Nathan's methods to doctors from every known species. Nathan now served as the chief medical advisor for the Federation's most dangerous missions. Whenever disaster struck and conventional medicine failed, the call went out for Dr. Nathan Cross and his team of specially trained doctors. These doctors came from many different worlds, but they all shared one thing in common. They had learned to practice medicine the human way when technology was not enough to save lives. The biggest test of Nathan's career came when the generation ship New Horizons suffered catastrophic system failures while traveling between star systems. The massive vessel carried 50,000 colonists heading to a new world, but they were still 3 years away from their destination. An explosion in the ship's main computer center had destroyed most of their medical systems and left them stranded in deep space with limited supplies. Nathan led a team of 12 doctors from different species to help the colonists survive until rescue ships could reach them. The team included Dr. Rachel Collins, who had been Nathan's first human student, and Dr. Voss from the mining colony, who had learned Nathan's techniques during the earthquake crisis. They also brought Dr. Kess from Harmony 7, who had become an expert in combining alien technology with human methods. The New Horizon was like a floating city when Nathan's team arrived. The ship had entire neighborhoods with schools and hospitals and parks where children played. But the explosion had damaged more than just the medical systems. Food production was failing and the air recycling equipment was breaking down. The colonists were facing slow death from hunger and disease unless something could be done quickly. Nathan realized that conventional medicine would not work in this situation. The colonists needed a complete medical system that could function without advanced computers or regular supply deliveries. He would have to create something that had never existed before, a medical program that could keep 50,000 people healthy for 3 years using only basic equipment and human knowledge. Nathan divided the colonists into small groups and trained volunteers from each group in basic medical care. He taught them how to recognize signs of illness and injury before they became serious problems. He showed them how to make simple medicines from the ship's garden, plants, and how to perform basic procedures like setting broken bones and cleaning wounds. Dr. Collins worked with the ship's engineers to convert manufacturing equipment into medical devices. They built simple X-ray machines from spare parts and created surgical tools from metal scraps. Dr. Voss organized the colonists into medical teams that could handle different types of emergencies. Each team had both human and alien members who could share their knowledge and skills. The hardest challenge came when a plague of food poisoning swept through the ship's children. Something in the ship's failing food systems was making hundreds of kids sick at the same time. The ship's remaining medical computers could not identify the cause and suggested treatments that made the children worse instead of better. Nathan gathered samples of everything the children had eaten and studied them using basic laboratory techniques he had learned in medical school. He found that bacteria in the ship's water recycling system had contaminated the children's food supply. The bacteria were not dangerous to adults, but children's immune systems could not fight them off effectively. Instead of trying to find complicated medicines to kill the bacteria, Nathan focused on helping the children's bodies recover from the infection. He organized the colonists to boil all drinking water and prepare simple foods that would not upset sick stomachs. He taught parents how to monitor their children for signs of dehydration and when to seek help from the medical teams. Within 2 weeks, the food poisoning outbreak was under control and the children were recovering. The colonists had learned to work together as a medical community instead of depending on machines to solve their problems. Nathan's system of distributed medical care meant that help was always available even when the trained doctors were busy with other emergencies. Nathan's greatest moment came during the final year of the journey when the ship's life support systems began failing completely. The colonists were slowly running out of breathable air, and the remaining engineers could not fix the complex recycling equipment. Death seemed certain for everyone aboard the New Horizon unless a miracle happened. Nathan remembered reading about early space missions where astronauts had to improvise solutions to life support failures. He worked with the colonists to build simple air scrubbers using materials from throughout the ship. They created backup oxygen generators from water and spare electrical equipment. Most importantly, they organized the 50,000 people into shifts that would use less air while the systems were repaired. The improvised life support systems worked just long enough for rescue ships to arrive and evacuate the colonists to safety. Every person aboard the New Horizon survived the 3-year ordeal, and many credited Nathan's medical system with keeping them alive and healthy during the crisis. The story spread throughout the galaxy and made Nathan a hero to billions of people who saw him as proof that human determination could overcome any challenge. Nathan decided to retire from active emergency work and returned to teaching at the Cross Institute. He spent his days training new doctors in the principles that had made him successful. The most important lesson he taught was that the best medicine was not always the most advanced medicine. Sometimes simple techniques and human compassion were more powerful than any machine. Dr. Rachel Collins took over Nathan's position as head of emergency medical response and continued his work helping people across the galaxy. She often told her students about Nathan's most important discovery. He had learned that every species had valuable medical knowledge that could help others if doctors were willing to share their techniques and work together. Nathan's final case involved saving the life of Prince Zara of the Hegemony, who was injured in a shuttle accident. The royal family's advanced medical team declared the injuries untreatable, but Nathan used basic human surgery to repair the damage and save the prince's life. This act of healing prevented a war between the Hegemony and the Federation and showed that medicine could build bridges between different peoples. Nathan Cross had started as an unknown doctor from a dangerous world that most aliens feared and dismissed, but he had become a legend who changed how the entire galaxy thought about medicine and healing. His legacy lived on in thousands of doctors who practiced Deathworlder medicine and saved lives when conventional methods failed. The quiet surgeon from Chicago had proven that sometimes the most powerful medicine came not from machines, but from knowledge, skill, and the determination to never give up on a patient who needed help.